uh, set in stone, to be quite honest. So it's as of now, I would use my get out of jail free card in saying Bird Magic.
Ah,
By that chosen magic. Um, so there's really no set in stone ideas. If anything that's worth going in zero mission, um, you can pretty much say it was probably that Mother Brain was only slightly destroyed of sorts, or that it Mother Brain wasn't fully destroyed and it was able to regenerate itself
mm,
in a fashion. So I can't really say, and I'm not really big of a fan of doing theories on things that I don't have much information to go over to kind of put it
yeah.
in stone. But I guess that it wouldn't be the first time space. I always took the space pirates as being somewhat capable of doing stuff like this. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I can't really say. It's more like she's back. Sort of the same way how Ridley is back in Super Metroid.
Yeah. And you've heard the argument like Metroid Prime isn't canon or Other
Yeah,
M isn't canon.
yeah, I've heard it.
Yeah. For those of you watching this who don't know about that, Noggin on YouTube, he actually uploaded a really good video on that
Yeah,
earlier today. Um, I'd highly recommend checking that video out if you're interested in learning more on that.
I would I would honestly. This might get me hated not going against Noggin, but I've always felt that the two series can still fit well together.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned this in my timeline video because when I was writing the script for that, I was sort of trying to find more in-game logic to the games rather than going for what other people are saying online. And on Metroid Prime One, you do find some certain scan logs that from the pirate bases that reference the events on Sebes, and
Hmm.
it's still on the map, so Sebes hasn't been blown up, as well as SR3D8.
Yeah.
I believe is later mentioned in Metroid Prime 3. When you visit this pirate homeworld, they have Metroids from Talent 4, from SR3D8, from Sebes. They're doing different experiments on them. And the whole reason for Meta Ridley in Metroid Prime is because he was being sort of put when in glorified life support after the fight on the original Metroid.
Yeah, and the
Uh,
Phazon kind of morphed
yeah,
the metal to his skin.
exactly. And
And
then
then
Meta Ridley
there's
comes back blue in Metroid Prime 3 because of the corruption from Dark Samus.
mhm.
And once you defeat it there is only when he reaches Omega Ridley.
Yeah.
So the bigger question is how he goes from Omega Ridley to regular Ridley again in Super Metroid, but that's why I put Bird Magic in my Who is Ridley video. Um, because I always felt that the Metroid games, even Hunters, which is a spin-off that doesn't have any big correlation with any other in terms of story, can still kind of fit the Metroid universe.
Yeah, because Hunter's introduced Silex.
Yeah, and now Silex was sort of canonized with Metroid Prime 3 and Federation Force of sorts.
Yeah.
Um, and
Um,
and so there's a lot of things. It's more like Other M. People say that Other M try to retcon Metroid Prime in the series, and I always felt that we're maybe taking this the wrong way because all the advertisement that was done for Other M in the videos before just said that this was a direct continuation to the original games. So it's simply not taking into consideration the events of Prime, not necessarily saying that they didn't exist or
yeah,
that they
and
take place in a different timeline.
there are a few moments in the game where it does kind of feel like they've intentionally put something in just to contradict Metroid Prime.
Yeah.
There are a few moments like that in the game.
Well, when you really think about it, Other M is kind of the hunters of the original Metroid games because if you take the events of Other M, nothing really changes in terms of the overall arcing story.
Yeah.
So Adam would still die. one of my main issues with Other M really is that Samus kind of doesn't do anything of importance in there. She doesn't kill Ridley. She doesn't take down Melissa. She doesn't take down the Metroids.
She pretty
Is
much just lets the entire team die.
she's pretty much backup. The leader still would have killed everyone. Um,
Yeah.
and you know, they would probably not stumble up until Ridley. Maybe Anthony would have still quote unquote died. Um, but it's I think the only thing that Samus really did is wound Ridley to cause him to retreat and then get killed by the Metroid Queen. But out of that, there's no real significance to Samus's point in there compared to say Hunters, where if Samus didn't get to the oubliette on time, Goria would have, or Gorea, or however you pronounce his name, would have, you know, still absorbed the energy of the 6 Hunters and be able to destroy the universe, because the whole ultimate power turns out to be a ruse for somebody to free him.
Hmm.
So
I
my own,
remember a few years back, one of my friends had a very crazy theory that rearranged the entire Prime timeline. Or not only just the Prime timeline, just the entire Metroid timeline.
what was it?
And it put Metroid Prime 2 at the very end of the timeline and kicked out Fusion entirely. I don't know why he did that. Well, I kind of
Oh,
understand why.
did,
Because
did
he
he
thought
tell you?
there was substantial evidence to say that Samus is dead in Prime 2.
Oh, so it's one of those Majora's Masks type of
Yeah,
deal.
it's one of those, and it was just so crazy. Like at first I was like there's no way you found good like
Evidence.
evidence for this.
Yeah.
But he had found some pretty convincing things, but it's still like there are so many other things in that game that contradict
The
the entire way he set up the
yeah.
timeline.
Yeah, because a lot of people, I've kind of had this a bit. There's a lot of people who went. I'm not really grab their pitchforks and went against me. But in my Hunters timeline, I did mention that I did say that Hunters takes place after Echoes, and everybody's like, it takes place after Prime One, and it was basically because my thoughts is that it kind of makes more sense introduce the Hunters after Echoes, then Silex and Corruption, then Federation
Yeah.
Force, then 4. Makes it more progressive in my eyes. It's like, oh, it's been released, so it's still a debated argument until we get an update on the timeline video. But I try to explain my point of view using in-game um, information or sorts. It's still fan theory. Don't get me wrong, but I at least try to, whenever I do fan theories, kind of look at it from a logical standpoint and take in consideration any arguments that could go against it because of evidence in the games and stuff.
Yeah, I love looking deeper in on things that just happen in games, not only
Yeah,
Metroid and a ton of games.
yeah,
Just to see like if there's a deeper meaning to anything, especially if it's something with a very open to interpretation plot.
yeah. It's sort of the same thing I had. With the new video, I guess people can tell that I'm a fan of Nier Automata
Mm.
and Yoko Taro's work and all that. And that's a game I really enjoyed. Would consider it be one of my favorite games ever. And there's a lot of stuff that's still open up in the air and about discussion and stuff, and that's kind of where what I like is that it makes my imagination just go a little bit wild,
Mm.
which is sort of the thing that I liked about the Metroid series is that the history of the Luminov and their Reptilicus and all these other species are kind of told to you through the environments, and you're only giving is a glimpse of the lore behind them in the scans. So there's a lot of things that you can theorize, and that's what has kept me coming back to these games and replaying them. So sometimes
Yeah,
when I
it's
play
just
the
th-
newer games, I kind of sad that there's the story, there's nothing more.
yeah, it's it really seems like especially the older ones, it really seemed like they had the perfect balance of gameplay and just enough story to get you thinking and theorizing about it.
Exactly, through the
Which
environments and
mhm.
everything.
And especially the isolation of say Prime and to a degree, Prime 2 is definitely a big factor for that too.
Yeah,
Because you don't have someone
that
else telling you like, oh, this was a very bad battlefield in a war between the Luminoth and the Ing.
yeah, which is the reason why I wanted to do that Echoes storyline video I made, which I honestly can't look back at it because I've my editing has changed a lot since then, and sometimes when I look at some of my older videos, I kind of you always get that cringe of like, oh my god, how I thought this was good.
Yeah.
So I feel that at some point in the future, I really want to redo it because um, Echoes is still my favorite one because of it. Because you're in all the other Metroid games, it seems that Samus has come to the world, it's destroyed. In Echoes, it's the only one where it really seems that you've come to the world at the brink of it being destroyed. Um,
Hmm.
so seeing Umo, seeing all the sleeping Luminoff, and sort of more of the how you get to see more how a peaceful race had to be thrown into a war type scenario and how they cope with it. They started making weapons and finding ways to just simply try to defeat the Ing,
Hmm.
um, and until you basically just jump in and save the day.
Yeah, and like I've seen a lot of people have a misconception about the Chozo that the Chozo are a very peaceful race that would like to avoid war wherever
No,
possible.
yeah,
Um, if that were the case, they wouldn't have trained Samus the way they did.
it's it's
Um,
it's it's worth reminding that even in the scans of Metroid Prime, I believe, and on the
mhm.
manga, it was sort of stated in stone that the Chozo used to be a warrior race,
Yep.
and they only went a little bit more the scientific, peaceful route because they advanced so much that they saw the sort of meaningless of war and combat,
Yeah. So they
and
started trying to end wars by
and make
using their
amends
technology.
exactly by sharing their their gift of wisdom to people, to like the Reptilicus and the Luminoth to a certain degree. And that's one of the things I liked about the Prime 2 and 3 is seeing how the Chozo's influence around the galaxy. And obviously the whole reason for Sam is because she was going to be the last Chozo remaining, so they needed a fit warrior to make sure that if anything goes wrong, they can still put put a stop to it.
Hmm.
Because if you really think about it, it's Samus was sort of the failsafe that the Chozo had in case that the Metroids or Mother Brain went AWOL. And it's a good thing they did
Yeah. Because if they didn't, bye Galaxy, bye
that.
bye.
But we all been dead by now.
Yep.
So, but at the same time, it's a kind of cool tradition and things that could have been explored. And it's one of the things that really disappoints me about other M is that they said they were gonna explore about Samus's backstory and the history. And I thought like, oh, there's gonna be Choso stuff, and it was only really like, well, I worked with the Galactic Federation some time ago, and Adam was there. And that was cool.
Yeah.
So I really hope that
I
like Metroid Prime 4 gives us a bigger, deep look to to the Chozo. I've always had like a thought in the back of my mind of why if Samus finds another is trying to find another chosen civilization. Um, turns out they're not fully extinct of sorts.
yeah. Um that would probably like Silex like trying to find the Chozo and like maybe he has like a misconception about them, so he's going to try and wipe them out. So it's kind of like a race between Silex and Samus
Yeah,
to try and
because
find the Chozo first.
because the other thing I kind of thought that might be a cool idea if it's not taking the Chozo route for Prime 4, could have been something like Silex has the Metroids, but he's not necessarily sided with the Space Pirates. So the Space Pirates want to take down Silex because of the Metroids. The Federation wants to take down Silex, but Silex wants to take them both out. So it's like a three-way battle
Yeah, and
of
Samus is
sorts.
kind of caught in the middle. You have to pick a side.
Yeah, Samus is kind of caught in the middle, and she's a doing it for the Federation because they're the goody two shoes, um, and more of a personal agenda in the sense that she's got to take down the Metroids. That's that's really her job description is really I work for the Federation part time
Yeah,
when you when you think
and
about it.
last year, me and my friend we tried to